Ashley, it's great to have you. Thanks for joining me on the Create Your Great podcast. I really appreciate it. I'm excited. Actually, you and I have talked a few times together, and you are a wealth of knowledge in a few areas, which we'll dive into today. But
Yeah.
I'm excited just to have a good conversation back and forth too about business and
Mhm.
becoming an entrepreneur and sharing some of your stories. So I really appreciate this.
Yeah, thanks, Scott, for having me. I'm excited too, and yeah, I know uh, we've talked before. We haven't really swapped stories or shared my full story, so I'm excited to get into the details today with you as well.
Yeah, definitely. I know you're going to have a good roadmap and some good stories for us. But before we get into some of that story structure, though, how's your summer been? And I asked that because, for me as a first time entrepreneur, I should say 1 year in,
Yeah.
this has been my first, and I'm curious to your take on this. This has been my first summer of as a career coach. Last summer, I was pivoting from leadership to career coaching. And boy, the summer is just different. The dynamic in the air, the events, people are checked out and going all over the place on vacation. So business is different, and how you run your business is different. Are you finding the same thing?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm finding some of the similarities, but also a bit of differences. I think for me, I've been able to take some time off in the summers and like take vacations, which has been important to me and starting my own business. Last year, I got married in July, and so I took time off then. And this summer, I went to Europe for a couple weeks. So for me, it was important for me to take some time off to rejuvenate and to relax and to enjoy the summer weather. As you know, in Boston, the winters are pretty tough. But business has been pretty good. So I'm finding that I'm going to like less networking events. My calendar feels a little more roomy, but I'm still talking with a lot of people and booking a lot for the fall. So it's kind of this like in between, nothing's really happening yet, but everyone's preparing for what's coming in the fall. So that's exciting, and also a little bit like trying to take it in and relax now before the push of the fall.
I know what you mean. I'm excited for the fall, and I've spent a lot of time on strategy and some other things, like on content too.
Yes.
And I'm excited to be. I've set a goal of being in front of people 2 to 3 times a week from September through mid-November.
You mean speaking or coaching or both?
All talk, speaking, workshops,
Ah,
even small speaking. Like, hey, maybe I'm doing a 10-minute. I just want to be in front of people
yeah.
at least 2 to 3 times a week in the fall. Which the summer's not like that. And the event, there's still events in the summer, I find, but they're more social in nature than they are like learning.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, the fall, everyone gets back into trying to squeeze in everything for the holidays and the new year, and I can't believe we're already talking about that.
Yeah. So let's not get that far ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to some of what you do. And I have to ask this though. That's great that you made it over to Europe this summer. Did you because you and I both know that self-care is really important. Sounds
Yes.
like last summer was definitely interesting for you getting married. That's
Yes.
awesome. When you went to Europe, were you attached or connected to work at all, or did you disconnect completely?
I disconnected, I'd say 90%, which is, I think, even more than I was able to do in corporate. So I really allowed myself this time to spend time outside, go swimming, just be myself. And yeah, that piece around self-care. I mean, my energy shifted. I didn't wake up just thinking about right my business all the time. So I had some clients that I checked in with, and but I prepared for that time off and kind of gave folks a heads up. So it allowed me that space. I did have anxiety before going on vacation, thinking like, I'm a business owner, I'm a solopreneur. How can I just leave my business and go on vacation? And so I did it, and I allowed myself that time and to be, with my family and friends, and, business is still great and everything was okay. So it was a great lesson learned for me to, like you said, take that time, because as coaches, as you know, our energy is so important in the way that we're able to connect with others. And, I share that, we can't show up at work or in any of our relationships half empty and expect to do, the best that we can.
No, I agree, and I love that you just shared that. And so, did you when you had this anxiety, were you setting systems up around your business so that, and this is everybody from like Tim Ferriss to, when you think of, oh gosh, Andy Grove, who was more talking from a large organization standpoint, former Intel CEO, they talk about like setting systems up in your business so that it's never relying on one person. Did you do anything like that before you left?
It's a good question. I think I'm still working on that piece. I would say I use communication, I guess, as my tool for the system, but I have an out of office, but I gave a lot of people heads ups and asked for that space, and also said, if you need to contact me, here's how to reach me. So I don't think I'm looking forward to having more systems in place to be able to relax into it. But the anxiety honestly was more about, it was more fear-based, right? Like if I don't respond to something fast enough, does that mean I'm going to lose, right, the opportunity or something? So that, I don't even know if a system, I guess the system could help with that, but that was my inner, fear of stepping away. And unlike, when I was in corporate HR, I had a team, but it didn't always feel that I could step away. And so you have that crunch of preparing to go for vacation and then that, coming back from vacation feeling. But I never felt that since I've started my business, which has been amazing.
Do you consider yourself, I have to ask, just based on things you're telling and sharing with me, would you label yourself or categorize yourself like as very conscientious in the way that like you do think of a lot of details and you do get a little anxious or worry and make lists and want to cover everything and make sure everything's checked off? Whereas, some people are super conscientious that way. Others are a little bit more relaxed or laid back, and whether or not they have a team around them to help with those items, but they don't worry as much about the details. Like what's your take on your personality type of that?
So, and the several personality tests I've done now, right? I'm not a details person. So like spreadsheets and, which is obviously important for business that drains my energy. But my mind, right, is always going with, I have to do this. I need to get this person back. So I have like this mental checklist running. So, the tools that I use to be more mindful are, meditation, just breathing and writing things down helps. But my calendar, right? My calendar is super important for that. So I don't think I get wrapped up in the details. I'm a big picture person. But the worries come in interesting ways. I don't know. I hope that answers the question. I haven't responded that way other than like details to me means spreadsheets and I'm like, ooh, I don't like that.
I'm with you on that. Boy, spreadsheets when I left corporate, I said, if I never see another Excel spreadsheet again, I will be happy.
Yeah. But they are a good system, right? It is a tool. But yeah, I'd rather write on Post-it notes, I think.
Yeah. I'm putting Post-it notes out of style in my place too. But this is part of, and we're going to do a deeper dive on what it is you do and how you help people. But I also love understanding what makes people tick. I think it's very helpful because we're all different. Yeah. But it's really good to hear insight from people about, not only what, their personality is like or things that they do and how they view things, but also like how you respond to them. Mm-hmm. That can be really insightful. So, as a new business owner, a relatively new business owner, what's your outlook on your own growth around this? Like your evolution as a person, as a business owner, as somebody who serves clients, like, are you looking at it so that I'm going to just continually get better and I learn by doing? Mm-hmm. You like a lot more preparation in advance before you dive into something? Like, what's your outlook on your growth?
Yeah, I am a risk taker. So I tend to jump in and I tend to follow my gut and my intuition and I kind of go for things. So, that's ultimately how I started my business, on the side while I was still working in corporate. But when I ultimately made the leap, right, to do this full time, I went for it. And so, yes, there's some preparation I take, but it's more checking in with me. And it's like that gut feeling that like I have to do this. If I don't do it, then I'll regret it. So that's kind of like my determining factor. And so that's when I know I'm ready to make a leap or a decision. So that's been, I moved to New York City from Boston years ago, and it was something I wanted to do for years, and I put it off, and finally I was like, I just have to do this. So I quit my job and I moved to New York City without another job, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to figure it out because this is what I want. So I tend to operate that way, and I think, from a business standpoint, the vision for my coaching and consulting business shifts. And, who I maybe thought I might be working with when I started a few years ago, that shifted, but it's kind of just growing and expanding in great ways. And I'm finding that I'm more open to all kinds of opportunities instead of feeling like, well, this is what I have to do, or this is what I said I was going to do. So I'm naturally, like, organically shifting, and I guess I've given myself permission, to go with that flow versus, I started off supporting a lot of folks in tech because that was my background, and it's evolved, and I support men and women. And so just being able to be open to that has been where I guess that's how I take little risks every day. Is I just try new things, and if it feels good for me and I'm able to help and serve, then I'm going to go with it.
Yeah, it sounds like you've been this way for a long while. This isn't like a recent development. The risk taking and being open to options, right?
Yes. Yeah. I think that's built in my DNA.
So would you say, boy, you'd be great to, have you spoken to college students or grad students?
I've done a couple here in Boston, a few universities from Northeastern, a lot of like science and tech groups. So yeah, it's interesting because I haven't really spoken about like my journey so much as like the career focus. But I'm curious why you think that. Tell me more, like why that group?
Because I did a few last fall here in Boston, and that's not as a career coach. Recent college grads are not my target market.
Yeah.
It's not to say I wouldn't work with somebody, but it's not my ideal target market.
Yeah.
I typically work with people who've been working for a while and have a few ideas of what they like and don't like in others. But your outlook on risk taking, and maybe a better way to put it is open to options and trying different things. Yeah. I think more 22, 25-year-olds need to hear that, because when I was in front of classrooms, one in particular that was seniors, they were all graduating in about a month. They were, not every single person in the room, but the majority of them were stressed to the max because they didn't have a job yet.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's interesting because I talked with a former colleague of mine. Her and I got together last week. Maybe haven't seen each other in 7 years, and she has a daughter going through that very same thing. And so, I was just sharing that it's okay to not know. It's okay to not have something lined up. And yeah, there's a lot of outside pressure, right? Societal pressure, and again, fear around, I have to have all this figured out. And yeah, I'm gonna look into that. That's a good point.
Yeah, I would just an aside, and we'll keep going. Is I would think you would be very attractive to deans of college, like the business school or grad program, to go in and speak to students because of what you've been through and experienced. So let's talk more about that. Is how that has served you well. So if you look back, before we get into the business now, if you look back on your career as a whole, you just told us some about how you approach things, what you did.
Yeah.
How has that served you as a whole in your career? The fact that you weren't afraid to pick up and move and take another job, and you started your current business while you were still employed. Like this like, I'm not going to wait mentality. How has that served you?
Yeah, I think it served me well. As you were talking about and thinking about, or even speaking with college students, what I kind of just realized was I've been able to work in multiple different industries, public companies, private companies. I've worked in a few startups. So I feel like I really explored the whole gamut of the corporate world. Some areas I enjoyed more than others. And that's how I found out what didn't work for me. So some of the harder or more negative experiences, right, taught me what I didn't want. And so for me, it's been, right, I just look at life as like an experiment, right? I'm just trying things on, testing things out, getting to know myself. So for me, it's worked well. I know that my friends right throughout my career have told me that I'm brave and I'm courageous, and I've actually never been afraid of public speaking. So I think that's also helped me because I got some exposure early on in my career working with some senior folks internally, and that gave me confidence, I think. So yeah, I think it has served me, and I'm hoping that's going to continue serving me going forward.
So you just hit on two words that I love to dive into a little bit, and I can't resist with you. And actually, you hit on a third topic about the public speaking. I might spend a minute on too. But you hit on courage and confidence, and I'd love to hear your take on both of them. So mine, high level, just to tee this up, is I think courage comes first. That we need the courage in order to start and do and get into what we want. We have to have the courage to do just that, to start, to put ourselves out there, to get out of our comfort zone. And over time, as we do things more and more, we build confidence.
Yeah.
How you don't seem to be lacking in courage in your career as an observation based on what I'm hearing, but what's your view on that? Like, do you feel you've always had courage and your confidence has grown as you've done different things, and how do those things serve you in your current business?
So I like the way that you've explained courage and confidence as well. Confidence, I believe confidence is built, right? So by taking action, we build our confidence over time. A lot of people will say, well, I'm not sure if I'm good enough, or right, the fears and the self-doubts come in, and that's where the courage comes in to say, and really the self-worth, right? Having this belief that, and the courage to try, even if you might fail, right? That's how the confidence is built. So by taking action, by being courageous, by trying new things. So yeah, I would tend to agree that for me, so maybe a better way for me to explain it is there have been times where I haven't felt confident, and looking back, right, there's a few things that were missing in those experiences or those cultures that I worked in. And if I don't feel safe, either because of a culture or an external circumstance or something that's being triggered, right, my own self-doubts, then it's harder for me to feel confident and to be courageous. And that's when I've noticed, right, that I've stopped taking those risks at that certain time in my life. So I think in my business, right, putting myself out there on social media, on panels, here speaking with you today, just showing up as I am, that takes a lot of courage to be seen and to be heard. And the more I put myself out there, despite my fears, the more confidence I have.
Yeah, that's great. I agree. And just a moment on public speaking. So if you were in a classroom of grad students, or maybe better yet, in a company, and there was a mid-20s, a year or two into their career, and dreaded public speaking, and they're like, Ashley, help me out. Like, how are you so good at? Just what is a tip you would give me on public? What would you share with somebody about public speaking, since it seems like that's something you've always been comfortable with?
Yeah. So practicing, right? Just doing it either in front of a mirror or recording yourself. So I'm a big advocate for watching yourself, no matter how difficult that might be. But that's what helped me early on in my career. As a kid, I was always in front of groups, like reading, and I spoke at my aunt's wedding when I was a little girl. And so when I made it into corporate, I took a public speaking class one afternoon, and they videotaped me. And I saw this weird thing where I was like moving back and forth on my feet, and I had no idea I was doing that. So being able to watch ourselves back from the body language piece, like, helps us realize that there's some things that we can tweak, and also it's probably not as bad as we think, right? It always feels worse in our head than it actually is. Also, some people, a few of my clients, their voices will shake. Some people, right, their hands shake. So I think it's important to know, like, what your nervous response or symptom is, so that way you can practice by breathing or putting in some tools in place. For me, it's always like, what's the fear? What's the worst thing that can happen? And if it's about being embarrassed, or then it's like, we'll start doing it in front of friends or people that you trust, and finding out that a topic that you really love talking about. So people will say, like, I don't feel comfortable talking about work stuff because I don't know it as well. So hey, if baseball is your thing, get up there and talk about baseball.
It does help. I'm glad you said that. It helps. One of the turning points in my public speaking path, and I was still, I would end up going back to corporate, but when I took a few years off to do nonprofit work, I found, and I was doing a lot of fundraising, and I would get in front of sometimes quite large audiences. Yeah. When I was talking about something I really believed in and had a passion for, I barely got nervous at all. Yeah. As opposed to that presentation in a big conference room at work or in stuff I didn't care about. that told me a lot. That was like 12 years ago, and I think it was never the same for me. I always looked at it a little bit differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk some more about your business now and what you're doing. So let's start from this fin. So speaking of confidence, right? Mm-hmm. You do something very valuable and special for people in terms of their worth, their value, negotiating. Before we get into the weeds of what exactly you do, like, what compelled you to get into this area? Was it like you identified a need that people need more help with this, or was there does it light you up to talk about value and worth and salary and all that? Like, what compelled you to get into this in the first place?
Yeah, it was my own negative experience at work trying to self-advocate. So I'd been successful in growing my career and negotiating higher salaries and negotiating new job offers. I didn't always get everything I wanted, but I've asked from the beginning. And there was, the higher I went up in my career. So I never worked with a coach, at this time in my career, and I was mostly working with men, especially in the tech space. So I felt like I was alone in trying to grow my career. And, this was, almost 10 years ago. So there wasn't the social dialogue around, women empowerment, and, even the mentor thing, I found it difficult to find. So I started my business because of what I needed and didn't have, and also because I'm super passionate about helping people get into leadership positions, helping people ask tough questions, and helping all of us, be paid fairly for our value. And when I dug into, what prevented me from speaking up, I realized it was a lot of my own fears of, again, being seen, of hearing the word no, not sure what I would do, all this loss that I put so much of myself and my eggs, in this job, in this corporate basket, that it was scary to think about risking it. And so through that experience, I just started speaking about salary negotiation and realizing that we don't learn it. It's a skill, and in our culture, it's not often taught. Money, people don't like to talk about money. So there's all of these layers to this. And as I started uncovering that for myself and what held me back, I was just felt compelled in this deep passion. Like, I have to share this. I have to get this out. I don't want anyone else to feel the way that I felt. And corporations are losing very, very talented people over things that could be prevented, if we're just allowing some real conversations to happen, and if some tools and systems could be put in place, perhaps. So it was my own experience, and then also, yes, this deep passion. I always knew I wanted. I've always, volunteered and been involved in serving the community, but this for me, it was finally the lights lit up, and I was like, this is where I need to be. This is my space. So it was really exciting to actually feel that pull after kind of searching for it for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, gosh, and there's so much. You're right. There's so many layers to this. Mm-hmm. The next question I can start in 5 or 6 different places. I'll pick this one. So you talk about, afraid to ask, or maybe a better way to put it is afraid to ask, to have difficult conversations. Mm-hmm. We know people struggle with talking about money, and I do want to unpack that some more too, because I think that's a part of what you do that was so helpful. I had you speak to my community one time, my group. And that was one of the things that I thought was really helpful that evening. But do we generally, let's talk about this and share with our audience, do we generally avoid in the corporate world, whether it's money related or not, difficult conversations? Did you find that, be it yourself or people you work with, we typically avoid those kind of conversations?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
And what's a method or a tactic to getting us to embrace having those more often, whether it's money related or just having a conversation, say, with your boss about things that you're not really comfortable with at this particular time, whatever the case, what is it that we can do to be more embracing of hard conversations?
Whew, this is a big one. So having worked in HR, right, part of my role was to be aware, this is my personal take on why HR was important to me and why this is how I believe the field can add value to business. So I believe, right, part of HR's role is having a pulse on the organization from the culture standpoint, from right programs and opportunities, and also from the business standpoint. So if we use the performance review process, right? So giving and receiving feedback. I mean, I don't really know anyone who enjoys that process or enjoys that time of year, whether they're an employee or a manager. And so just the current way that we've structured, right, a lot of the way that we do work in corporations, I don't think lends itself to open, honest, transparent conversations. So there hasn't been traditionally transparency around money. There hasn't been a lot of transparency about why certain people are promoted over others. So again, this one's multi-layered. And I think, again, starting with the leadership team, the way that they communicate about the business to all the employees, to all the managers, really feeds into whether or not employees feel safe bringing up things with their manager, whether or not there's a dialogue or common language around how to give and receive feedback, or how and when to talk about your role and your future and your paycheck. So I think...
Did you, when you were in HR, sorry to interrupt, but did any of your employers say, like, I like where you're going with this, that you have to create and have a culture where people feel they can bring things up without fear of consequence or negative consequence, I should say.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
And that's culture that's created. And I don't think everything in a business or organization needs or should be from top down, but that's one thing that to establish that kind of a culture, it needs to be set, I think, at the top.
Yes.
So that people at all levels feel like, hey, I can go and speak or share or whatever. So did you have employers that enabled and empowered that, or not so much, huh?
Not so much. I'm working with some companies now that, yes, and especially small tech startups that are really going through high growth phases. So that's another piece of the work that I'm doing. And that's why I love running my business, is because I can work with the companies that are into this, doing this and creating intentional culture. And I can work with employees who are looking to grow their career. So no, I mean, I found it challenging. And obviously this is a generalization, but it took me a long time to find a company that aligned with my values and that really did care deeply about the culture and the people. And I actually left my favorite company and biggest paycheck to run my business because it was just too late at that time, by the time I found it. So I think there's way more opportunity now for companies to be in this space, but I felt earlier in my HR career that there were so many missed opportunities in this space. And, you know, one of the biggest compliments I got being in HR was that people would tell me, Ashley, you're not like any other HR person that I've met. And I always thought, oh, great, thank you. This is good, because I wanted to have these conversations, and many times it wasn't happening. And that's why I didn't advocate, right, when I really wanted to. I didn't feel that there was support for me to do that. And if I felt that in HR, you know, others certainly felt it.
So that I love, and this is all great. I mean, we could spend probably 2 hours talking about this, but we can't. So let me keep moving forward though. But I love that you said that you work with corporate clients too. That's awesome. Yes. I see that just what we're talking about now, there is a need. We know this.
Yeah.
So how have you found, you don't need to get super specific,
Okay.
but, or name names obviously, but how are you finding corporate clients? And is it because they are proactively looking to have help of the like that you provide and doing these kind of things? Or did you just make a connection with somebody and they learned what you did and said, hey, this is great what Ashley does, let's bring her in to help us out? Like, how did some of that come to be?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I actually a company that I spoke at recently, I was able to kick off their women's leadership group. So they because of a kind of a negative experience and some women speaking up in the organization, right? Leadership decided to put together this organization and provide funding for, right, this women's network. And so in that case, right, it was kind of like, oh, things aren't the best, but we want help and we're not the experts in how to do this. So let's bring in some people. So that's kind of, I think overall, that's the environment that we're in, is that companies are paying attention now to, right, how important it is from a branding perspective to be an employer of choice, to be a great place to work. And they may or may not have the internal folks to be able to handle this. And especially when you're internal, it's hard to see, right? So having an objective viewpoint come in to be able to say, hey, this is what is happening here. Again, that pulse on the organization, like these are some steps and tools to put in place. So it's a little bit of both, where I've met some folks, and then it's also me, right, just sharing my viewpoint and people saying, hey, this is great. I'm picky with who I work with. I want them to align with my values, and I'm not a good fit for everyone.
Yeah, that what you just said is such an important part for starting a business that really is going to bring you fulfillment. If you're chasing money and recognition and things of the like, doesn't make you a horrible person, but if you're doing that, you can kind of overlook some of that. But when you're doing it from a place of, I want to really create fulfillment and joy in what I do, and make the impact I want to make, you have to be very selective.
Yes.
So important.
Yeah, and I mean, just to kind of go full circle, right? That's what I did earlier in my career. That's what many of us do. We want that title. We want the bigger paycheck. I mean, I had an amazing office with an amazing view of all of Manhattan and New York City, and I felt like, I made it, right? And then it took losing that, right, for me to realize, like, wait a second, that isn't who I am. That actually doesn't bring me the fulfillment I'm looking for in this life and in this world. And so it was, for me, a wonderful wake-up call. But I understand, folks that are on that path, and my hope is that I can inspire people to go after their dreams, just like you.
What you just said in the last 30 seconds is the perfect teaser for this podcast. I love it. I want to package what you just set up and share that. We gotta bite-size that one up and share it with people.
All right, cool.
I love it. So let's slide back over to individuals now and helping them. So, you mentioned obviously blocks around money, which I think almost all of us, I mean, everybody's a little different. We all have things that we're good or not so good at, and blocks that some of us have blocks that others don't have. But I really think a money mindset, we all have a money mindset.
Yes.
And some are healthy, but a lot of it's not healthy. So what's your approach to giving people a really healthy outlook on money so that they can go and sit down with the right people in their business and have those conversations? Where does the mindset come in?
Yeah, the mindset starts with awareness, right? So just what you just said, that we all have our own relationship with money. So it's taking some time and doing some self-reflection, right? Through coaching, the beautiful thing is, we get to ask the tough questions, and right, as the employee or the candidate or the client, the reflection piece first to understand, like, well, wow, what is my relationship to money? Where do these beliefs come from? Where were these patterns modeled? Where did I learn this? One of my important big questions is, what does money do for you? Why is it important for you? And everyone has a different answer. So if you get, my client work it's going within first. So that way, then you can take action externally. So I believe the money mindset starts right first with that client, with that one person, and then bringing awareness to it. And they get to decide, right, how do I want to shift this? What's what's been holding me back from having what I want because I believe these things. So when they have that aha moment, right, it's like a hammer comes down, and then they're able to say, okay, I can create some new beliefs. Or, the process is really, I think, untangling our self-worth from money or what we have. So when you're able to do that inner work, and then you're able to sit down with your boss and just say, right, from a factual standpoint, this is my value I bring. This is, right, what's being paid in the marketplace for someone like me. I'd like to have a discussion about how my pay aligns with my contribution. That becomes about facts and about business versus you and what you're worth. So there's that separation, and being able to just have that conversation, and no matter what the outcome is, you as the person still get to decide if you say yes or no, and if it works for you.
I should, going forward, I'd be so tempted to, and again, we know about the group call that you did with me. I cover money mindset, but I have so many other things to cover in my program. I would love to have clients of mine meet with you or talk to you just one time.
Yeah.
I feel that's really, this is all so important.
Yes.
I love when you talked about, we have to kind of I'm not saying it the exact same way you did, but we have to kind of disconnect the what in our life and like what money gives us and whatnot. And, we all need it.
Yeah.
But that's not who we're about and who we want to become.
Mm-hmm.
Who we want to become is more about the alignment and our purpose and our mission and how we impact people, and I would love to, I think I'm sure you're great at what you do from everything I know about you, but like, this is really impactful stuff that I think most people, if not everybody, needs a little dose of.
Yeah. Yeah. And right, we all do need money, but when it becomes like a necessity, when we can see it as, maybe not a necessity, but when we can see it as a tool to create the life that we want, that's when it's like, oh, it's not about who I am as a person. Like, just because I'm making X doesn't mean I'm good or bad. It's, hey, if I'm making Y, then I can do all of this. Then I can go after my passions. Then I can go on the vacations or whatever it might be. So for me, like, money means I get to experience the life that I want. I get to travel, right? It's a tool for me to feel alive in many senses.
Yeah, for sure. So let's do one or two deep dives then, for the benefit of the listeners too, about a scenario or two. Mm-hmm. I love your stories and your wisdom. That's my favorite part. But I think we would be remiss if we didn't include one or two scenarios that you can help paint a picture for. For example, let's say somebody is just based on performance and tenure, or one of the two or both, is in line to get a pay increase, but they're shortchanged. Maybe they get something, but it's not a lot. Mm-hmm. What would you say to somebody who comes to you, and maybe you work with people like this, and they got a few grand extra in their salary, but they should have gotten 10 grand. I'm just making up hypothetical numbers. What would you say to somebody who comes to you and says, my boss said I'm doing a good job, but they were only able to give me X, but I deserve Y. What should I do? What's some of your advice in a situation like that?
Yeah. So so did you say there was a promotion with that or no?
No promotion. Just saying you're doing a good job, but we can only give you this at this time.
Okay. So like an annual, here's your, 3% bump. Thanks for your hard work. And then you're like, what? So
yeah, kind of the stuff they give to anybody. And it doesn't make you, when you get just what everybody else gets, it doesn't make you feel appreciated.
Yes. Yeah. So this is hitting on a big point for me is, right, the recognition piece. So if you're the employee that feels, right, that you have worked your butt off, that you've gone above and beyond, that maybe you've taken on extra responsibilities, or you've covered for a boss who was out, or who knows, right? You have to have those conversations typically outside of the annual review process. So if you're hoping and you're waiting, right, those are never good signs or symptoms. So I'm really about being proactive and trying to understand how the corporation makes decisions. So how does your current organization come to those decisions? So if it's coming up on end of year and you're, everyone typically gets X, but you're really wanting Y, you have to speak to your boss before that process begins, or afterwards being able to say, I know that this was the typical increase, but I really believe, right, I've done X, Y, and Z this year. I've gone above and beyond. I stepped up on this project. I've reached all these goals that we've put in place. I'd really like to talk with you about what it would look like and how to make it possible to get, right, a bigger increase. Can we talk about putting a plan in place for that over the next 3 months? So when I work with clients, right, it's people want, usually they're in that situation where they're either annoyed or frustrated or feeling resentful. And I say, like, it takes time. It takes time for your boss to get the approvals. It takes time for you to maybe prove, right, something else to the organization just to be able to get, what you want. So I guess the short answer is, like, being proactive and actually asking for what you want, because your boss can't read your mind and the company doesn't know how you're feeling. So if you're expecting or hoping for something and you don't say it, you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah, more often than not, right?
Yeah.
Do you think that somebody should ever, maybe this is too broad because I know there might be a lot of different circumstances at play, but do you think somebody should ever leave a job simply because of the money? And let me add context. Like, I'm not talking about jumping from company A at 75,000 to company B at, 125,000. That's kind of a no-brainer unless, the job is completely out of left field. But I'm talking about, like, going somewhere else for $5,000 or $10,000 more. And do you ever feel like money, just the money? Because I've known people who left just because they're going to get a little more money. Is that a good reason to change jobs?
I don't want to give you that it depends, but in general, money doesn't give you happiness, right? Money doesn't bring happiness. So I would want to know, right, why is that $5,000 or $10,000 motivating to you, right? What are you after? What is that going to give you that you don't have? So it's money usually is, right, the symptom of something else. So I've been at companies where people, right, have threatened to leave. We've given them more money and they still leave, 6 months to a year later. So usually if it comes down to the money piece, there's other things happening. Either it's not a good fit, you really don't like the job, the culture, right, doesn't align with you. I mean, if you're chasing 5 or 10,000, I mean, I'd have to ask, like, is that really worth it when you have to start over with benefits, when you're vacation, right? All these other factors, retirement, are you losing out on maybe retirement matching? For that small amount, I would say, like, there's something else going on and I would want to dig in deeper. So you could be making $3 million, and if you don't like the company or the product or the way you're treated, right, that's not going to last forever. So money doesn't solve everything at work. I mean, at least for me. And if someone's able to do that, I give them a lot of credit because I couldn't.
Mm-hmm. What would be more rewarding for you? Obviously, there's no right or wrong. This is what's for you. What would light you up more? Helping a small to mid-sized startup really establish a good, open, healthy culture, or helping one individual who's been stuck for years? I'm not talking like a 25-year, I'm talking like a 45-year-old who's been working in a company like 15, 18 years, and they've been stuck and not happy with their recognition and compensation. And you really coached them to the point where they communicated, shared, asked for what they wanted, and they got it. Yeah. Which of those two scenarios is more fulfilling for you?
The latter. Yeah, being able to help someone become unstuck, to actually ask for what they want, or to be able to receive it, right? All of that shift, that work, that celebration. I mean, sometimes that happens for me just in one call with a client, right? And for me, it's like, I love what I do. This is what I'm meant to be doing, and this is, if I can change one person's life, then, that's it for me. And So secondarily, it's still important for me to help companies, right, create spaces that people can stay in and thrive and actually grow their career, so they're not in that position, in 10 years. But, as a coach, I love that, interaction with clients, being able to get to know someone on a deep level and help them feel so much better. That's really why I'm doing this, to be honest.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So as we wind down, I know we only have a few minutes left. I have one more question that I like to ask almost every guest that I have. And we'll share more about, your business and where people can find you so this is not a 5-year plan question. Don't worry. I dread that. I don't believe in it. There's no 2, 3, 5, 10-year plans, but for you personally, as an entrepreneur and somebody who's had a really good, interesting, admirable career path so far, what's one of your outlooks, a few years down the road or 5 years down the road in terms of what you want to be accomplishing? Mostly around impact, not status, not level, not money. And I know you wouldn't answer it that way, but what kind of impact do you want to be making, do you think, down the road in a few or 5 years?
For me, the impact I want is, and I really want to create a movement around, right, people building fulfilling, happy lives, living their dreams, their careers, their businesses, whatever it might be that's important to them. But I want to shift this, right, all the shoulds and the have-tos to, I feel energized by this. I want this. I love this. So for me, I want to touch as many lives as possible, reach as many people as possible, change as many organizations as possible. So for me, the impact is, I don't know, being in front of larger and larger audiences, just reaching as many people at all levels as possible, and creating the future leaders, right, of the corporate world and the business world that are going to be able to take this mindset, this approach, and infiltrate it and integrate it into, right, the work that we do, so people can be happier at work, because life is short. So that's the mission right now. That's the vision. And for me, just being able to impact as many people that I'm meant to.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. We have so much alignment. Much alignment in what we do and how we want to affect people. Do you, I lied, I have to sneak this question in. What's your reaction if anybody ever says or infers, you're a woman, you're a female, this is great. I mean, it's not negative in terms of what they're implying or their intention is. We need more of examples like you, or you to teach and share and mentor more women. Do you think that gets overplayed? And I ask this because I don't think I've ever told you this before, but my mom was a vice president for 2 major companies for a long time. And she was my professional mentor. My dad was a teacher and a financial advisor, but my mom had big corporate jobs. Yes. And I always respected her, and I always respected women I worked with. One of my best bosses ever was female. Yeah. So I don't look at it differently, but I know a lot of people do. Does that either inspire or annoy or affect you in any way when people are like, oh, you're a woman, go at it? What's your reaction to that?
Yeah. So internally, there's almost a sense, so I'm the oldest of 5 kids and come from a big family, and there's a lot of responsibility, right, in that role as in my family. And so I've noticed recently when people say, oh, you're setting a great example, or right, that yes, I want to be able to set an example, but I can't take on that pressure for everyone else, that I still have to stay true to me. And again, my style, my approach, right, this is about finding people who want to work with me and be around me. I know that there are some amazing female leaders, and I know there are some really awful female leaders. So I don't think there's, people are people. And there's been amazing men that I've worked with that have been, right, inspirations and mentors for me as well throughout. So I don't think I've really, I think it's come across just more as maybe this internal pressure, right, that I'm being seen as, a female leader, and I have to, right, do the best that I can, which of course I want to, but I'm doing this all for the first time. So I'm more in the mindset of, I'm going to share, right, the ups and downs, what I've tried, what's worked and what hasn't, and hope that I can inspire someone else to try the same.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's really insightful. And I know everybody's view is different.
Yeah.
So where can people find you?
You can find me on my website. So my website is ownyourworth.com. And of course on social media. So Own Your Worth. I have a private Facebook group for folks to ask questions. I do some Facebook Lives. Would love to have you on, Scott, as well. And yeah, my email, if anyone wants to reach out directly, it's ashley@ownyourworth.com.
Own Your Worth. And we'll definitely include all that in the release of the podcast too, so that people can check you out. And what's if you have one nugget, one call to action or something, if you want to leave listeners with one tip or one thought when it comes to their career and or their salary or their place in an organization, what would it be? What would that nugget be?
To find the courage and go out there and ask for what you want. Life is too short, and no matter what the answer is, you'll be able to course correct. You'll be okay. So go out there and do it. Ask for what you want.
I like that. That's your theme. Ask for what you want.
Yeah.
We need to do that more often.
Yeah.
So, Ashley, this has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. I had a great time, and thanks again for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you.